And my sermon's really not so appropriate for kids. I'm just going to put that out there for the parents. So, all right. Miss Wong was working as a cab driver, and she picked up a passenger who pulled out a knife and tried to rob her. She surrendered all that she had. And she said, "This is everything I've earned today. If it's too little, you can also take the coins in my pocket." The robber was stunned by her frankness, and she continued, "Where do you live? It's late. Your family must be so worried about you. I'll take you home." And her thoughtfulness and her kindness moved the robber, disarmed him, if you will, and he put his knife away. She elaborated, "My family used to live a hard life, so I learned how to drive, and I became a cab driver. Even though I don't make a lot of money, we are better off than before. But look at you, just look at you. A man with a healthy body, what can't you do? If you keep going along this path, your life is doomed." And they arrived at his house, and Mrs. Wong told him as he got out, "Listen up, you didn't rob from me. I gave you the money. Do something good with it, and don't ever rob anyone again." And the robber, who had been silent throughout the entire ride, suddenly cried out loud, and he gave her the money back. "I promise I won't do this again, no matter what," he said. We read in Mishle and Proverbs, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Using our tongues wisely is a core message of Jewish tradition. Speech is powerful. Words can create or destroy, connect or cut off. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs wrote, "Judaism emerged as an answer to a series of questions. How can finite human beings be connected to an infinite God? How can they be connected to one another? How can there be cooperation, collaboration, collective action, families, communities, and a nation without the coercive use of power? How can we have these units without coercion? How can we form relationships of trust? How can we redeem the human being from his or her solitude? How can we create a collective liberty so that my freedom is not bought at the cost of yours?" And the answer is through words. Words that communicate, words that bind, words that honor the divine other and the human other. And he continued, "Never take language lightly," implies the Torah, for it was through language that God created the natural world, and through language that we create and sustain our social world. It is as essential to our survival as the air we breathe." End quote. Words matter. Words have power, and yet words wielded like weapons relentlessly stream across our phones and computer screens, television sets, newspapers, and sometimes out of our own mouths and fingers as well. Look, we can't control the vitriol that is out there in the political arena, in cyberspace, but we can each become more attuned to our own language. It's up to us to reclaim and re-sanctify the power of speech, to help, not harm, to elevate, not demean, to build and not destroy, to create, not condemn. One of the central prayers of our Yom Kippur liturgy is the Al-Chet, which is the longer confessional prayer. It's an alphabetical list of 44 different sins. Yeah, I know, right? Okay, yeah. Al-Chet shechatanu lefanecha, we have sinned against you. So I went through it again this year, and every year it's like, okay, here they are. These are the 44 wrongdoings, and they aren't the big sins, really. You know, it's not a list of murder, like don't murder and robbery and things like that. No, they're small, everyday actions. They're garden variety bad things that human beings tend to do. And over a quarter of the sins in Al-Chet are sins of speech, of language. Cursing, mockery, gossip, lying, foolish talk, all these small ways that we can do wrong with our language. And as I read through them, and I think as we read through them and go through it, you have to ask yourself, like, are these really, like, is this so bad? You know, we're good people. Are these so bad? And so I think that we know, though, that often our deepest wounds are those that were inflicted through the words of another. Our tradition understands that sins of speech undermine our integrity. They chip away the fabric of community. And we understand that our words can create trust and build relationships, or weaken trust and erode those same relationships. We know that mockery shames and humiliates. And we've seen gossip harm reputations or turn others against a person. We've been lied to. We have sinned against you by the way we talk. But this year we can do better. Today we say we will do better. Words matter tremendously. This is the message of Jewish tradition. Dr. Ira Bjak is a palliative care physician. He's the author of a book called The 4 Things That Matter the Most, and he wrote that there are 4 statements that when they are said regularly and often, make for both living well and dying well. And they are, number 1, thank you. Number 2, I love you. Number 3, I forgive you. And number 4, please forgive me. And these 4 phrases capture the essence of Yom Kippur and the process of seeking forgiveness. I'm going to go in reverse order. Please forgive me. That's what today is about. I have made mistakes. I regret my actions. Yes, I am human and I am flawed, and so I have let you down. I have hurt you. I didn't live up to my commitments, and so I will take responsibility for my actions and make amends. Yom Kippur literally means a day of seeking forgiveness. The other side of that coin is I forgive you. We say on this day, as hard and difficult as it is, yes, I have been wronged, and I want to let go of the pain and the hurt and the grudges. They don't help me. I recognize that you too are human and flawed, and I am willing to let go of the hope of a different past. Number 3, thank you. Judaism is a religion of gratitude. I think speech and gratitude are 2 of those big things, right? I am grateful to be alive. I am grateful for the countless gifts in my life. I am grateful for the people who make my life worth living. I am grateful to be here. There's a phrase in the Amida, Sabenu mituvecha, which means satisfy us with your goodness. And I think about that a lot, right? That there's so much good that we experience each and every day. There are so many blessings in our lives, and we spend our time complaining and kvetching and focusing on what's wrong. You know, I've said it here before, right? Any time where I feel like really ungrateful, having a bad day, I just think like, I can turn a tap and clean, hot, running water comes out, and that is a miracle. Thank you. Right? There are so many blessings that we overlook. And finally, I love you. Because at the end of the day, what defines us is love. And love never dies. In a few moments, we will remember with love our family and our friends who have passed away. And this year we remember not just our own loved ones, but also those who died in Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th last year. When looking at the final text messages and words of the victims of the massacre, I was struck that many of them apologized to loved ones. So famously, Hirsch Goldberg Pollen's last messages to his mom were, "I love you, I'm sorry." Another person messaged, "It's the end, they got me. Honey, I'm sorry about everything. Take care of the kids and send a kiss to Mom." We read in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, that love is stronger than death. And after a person dies, it is love that remains. I think many of us have experienced that. On October 7th, many people spent their final moments in acts of love, in acts of concern and heroism and care for others. For example, a 23-year-old Arab-Israeli paramedic named Awad Darwashi's, his friends begged him to leave the Nova Festival where he was treating the wounded. He had come as a paramedic to help. And he insisted on staying. "No," he said, "I'm not leaving. I speak Arabic, I can manage." He was murdered. American-Israeli Adir Masika was also 23. He was also at the Nova Festival, and he told his family that he didn't think he was going to make it, and he loved them very much. Adir and his girlfriend and several friends hid in a shelter in a field, and when they heard terrorists approaching, Adir and his friend Eli Nachmani charged at them. Adir and Eli were both killed while saving the lives of Adir's girlfriend and two of their other friends. Gili Adar worked for 2 summers at Camp Tel Yehuda, where my daughter Ava attends, and I know a number of our youth either go or went. Keely was also at the Nova Festival. She was a bright, just sunshine of a girl, young woman. She tried to flee the party, but police turned her back. They told her there was an infiltration of terrorists close by. And so she called her friend, who was also at the festival, and told her to go a different way. Don't go that way. Gili was murdered, but her friend survived because of Gili's instructions. Ben Shimoni, you may have heard of him. He was 31 years old. He was also at Nova, and he initially made it to safety. He fled from the unfolding massacre in his car, and he had brought with him 4 frantic strangers. He just piled them in the car, and they drove away. And they got to Beersheba, which was 30 minutes away. He dropped them off, and then he headed back to the festival to save more people. And he rescued 5 more people and got them to safety. And they begged him to stay. And his family begged him to stay, but he went back a 3rd time. And he was killed on that 3rd rescue attempt after his vehicle came out under heavy gunfire. So Ben Shimoni saved at least 9 lives that day, and he died with 3 more people in his car, strangers. Ariel Bilia was 28. He was murdered as he protected his family on a kibbutz in Ofakim. He and his wife Shoshana, their 2 children, were spending Simchat Torah and Shabbat with their extended family. So he was there with his mother and his brother and sister-in-law and their 4 children. There were 11 of them total. They heard gunshots outside, and they later heard Hamas terrorists trying to break into their home. And so one by one, 10 of them, including a newborn baby, climbed out a window, crossed to their neighbor's roof, and hid in an enclosure that housed a solar water heater. Only Ariel stayed behind. He picked up a metal rod to try to fight, and ultimately he was shot dead. The rest of his family, though, survived, and they were rescued from the roof hours later. Adam Brima was 47. He was a Sudanese asylum seeker. He was murdered in Sderot. So Adam is an interesting one. He is originally from Darfur in the Sudan, and he came to Israel about 15 years prior. He fled his war-torn homeland after his father and his uncle were killed. And October 7th, he left home when he heard gunshots. He wanted to figure out what was going on and see if he could help. You may have heard of Deborah Matias. She's 50. She's an American-Israeli. Her father actually is a professor at Brandeis. Never had him, but that's my alma mater, but I knew who he was. And she and her husband, Shlomi, who was 49, they were both musicians, and you may have heard of them because when they were murdered in their home in Kibbutz Cholit, they protected their 16-year-old son, Rotem, with their bodies. And the bullet went through Deborah's body, and it did hit Rotem, but the force was stopped because his mother was protecting him. And finally, Adi Vital Kaplan was a dual Israeli-Canadian citizen. She was only 33 years old. She saved the lives of her 2 sons, a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old, as well as her husband and her father. Her house was stormed by Hamas terrorists, and Adi texted her husband and her father and warned them not to come home no matter what. Do not come home. She also somehow convinced the Hamasniks to spare her sons and take them to a neighbor, and they did, but not before shooting her dead in front of them. May their memories be a blessing. In just a moment, we'll begin our Yizkor Memorial Service. It's an opportunity for us to focus our attention on our loved ones that have passed away, to reflect on their lives and their legacies. And while most of our loved ones did not die in acts of heroism, they lived beautiful lives, lives that touched us, small moments where we can say, my mom was my hero, my grandpa did this. The gift of Yizkor, the gift of remembering, is that sometimes we can see things more clearly in their reflection than when we looked at them directly, when we lived through them. And so we'll return to our grief, and some of it is so raw and so fresh, and some of it has been our companion for many, many decades. So do you remember those 4 statements that I mentioned earlier? They are thank you, right? Thank you. I love you. I forgive you. Please forgive me. They're tools that will help you in the following exercise. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, if you're comfortable, and imagine yourself traveling up the side of a mountain to a large plateau. And as you walk across that plateau and see the wide open sky, see the landscape around you, up here it's a breathtaking view. As you walk a bit farther, you notice that this plateau ends in a cliff. Approach the edge of the cliff and look across, and there, across a misty canyon, is another cliff, and there you can see your family, friends, and loved ones who have passed away approaching you. They walk across a matching plateau and stop and face you. This is what Yizkor allows us to do, to walk to the canyon between the living and the dead, to peer into the mist and to see our departed in our mind's eye. It's a meeting of our physical world with the metaphysical realm, and as you watch, imagine one person on the other side stepping forward, and in your mind and in your heart, say to them, thank you. I love you. Please forgive me. I forgive you. And you can repeat this exercise with all of those you remember today. Yizkor is not meant to be a monologue, but a dialogue. Imagine speaking with your loved ones and hearing their response. And if you need to hear it, imagine them saying back to you, thank you. I love you. Please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. I love you. Please forgive me. I forgive you.